Hello, everyone, and welcome to Re-Engineer You, the number one show for massive weight loss. I am your host, Cameron Magarchuk, Master Transformation Coach, and welcome to this episode. I'm really excited for this episode because I got a really unique guest on with me today. His name's Shane McDavid, and he's got a very unique kind of angle that he goes about with the people that he works with, and a really unique specialty that I'm very excited to talk to him about. So let's get him in here. Shane McDavid, how's it going?
Doing really well, Cameron. Glad to be here and ready to get started.
Awesome, good man. Well, I got my pen ready because I'm going to be taking notes on everything you're talking about here because I'm super excited for what we're going to be discussing. So maybe just give us a little brief overview of yourself and kind of what your specialty is and what you've been up to the last little while that kind of led you to where you are today.
Okay. So my name is Shane. I'm 26 years old. I consider myself an expert with appetite suppression. So I originally got into fitness during my undergraduate. I finished a degree in exercise science, went on to get my degree in nutrition. Basically, a professional student at that point. I was in school for what seemed like forever. My wife and we decided to move to North Carolina, where I wanted to finish my master's degree in nutrition. So hopefully my southern accent won't be too strong in this video.
It's okay.
Um,
People that watch these tend to like accents. I remember
oh, okay.
I had Nick Pino. Have you met
Yeah.
Nick yet? I had
Yeah.
him
Yeah. Yeah.
on a call one time, and people loved his accent. So yeah,
Right.
work it up. If you can even make your accent a little bit deeper, that's even better.
Right. Okay. I may have to do that. So I came down to North Carolina, and I actually worked in a research lab where we looked at appetite suppression and different foods and how they affect it. So, for example, we found that egg protein suppresses your appetite more so than gluten, one of the main proteins in wheat. So maybe one of the benefits from eating a gluten-free diet may be because of appetite suppression. So the thing that really bothered me the most, though, was here I was, looking at research showing that certain foods suppress your appetite more so than others. Um, but the typical advice was eat in moderation, and just watch your calories. And that can work for some people,
Mhm.
but what ends up happening is they're miserable. Their appetite is out of control. They have cravings. And it's like, if you open a bag of chips, how many people honestly eat a handful of chips?
Mhm.
A lot of times what happens, that bag of chips turns into eating the entire thing, watching TV while you're doing so, and not even realizing how many calories you've taken in. So um, so I had a few friends actually that went to school with me, and they ended up going to work for the food industry. And their main goal was to make foods taste as awesome as possible. And that was, that was their entire career actually. And what we are finding out now is these processed foods that people are eating, even if they're low fat or low carb, or just as long as they're highly processed, they're not affecting hormone levels like they should. So to give you an example, ghrelin, which is a hormone that will cause you to be hungry, after you eat, it typically goes down. But what we're finding out are these highly processed foods don't cause ghrelin to go down hardly at all. So you eat those three to 500 calories at that meal, but you feel like you haven't eaten anything. And unfortunately, that's making weight loss more difficult
And
for
why
everyone.
do you know why that is? Like why is the process, like what are they doing in the processing, and what is it about those foods that aren't affecting the hormones like that? Do you know anything about that?
Well, there. So in the brain, there's the reward center, and if you ask most people what affects the reward center, it's actually drugs.
Hmm.
So, for example, in our lab, we oftentimes use cocaine actually to stimulate the brain.
Yeah.
And what they're finding out is the foods that they're designing are stimulating the brain similarly to these drugs, not to the same extent, but much higher than what it should. And it's a combination of things. So, a lot of people want to put the blame on sugar.
Hmm.
That's pretty common right now. But oftentimes it's the combination. So sugar, along with fat, with the texture of food, glutamate. So if you think about MSG in foods, all of those things can cause you to overeat and and not be completely satiated like you should be.
Oh, okay. Cool. Cool. Very cool. Okay. Well, yeah. Keep going with what you were finding there too, because that food industry stuff is pretty interesting.
Yeah. So the thing about foods and suppressing your appetite, if you think about when most people struggle with food, they tend to snack in the evenings.
Mm.
When they've came home from work, they're finally able to rest. They're always grabbing, whatever processed food it may be. And it's never, fruit or, a vegetable or
Yeah.
some protein source.
Yeah.
And these foods can be highly rewarding or highly palatable or
Mm-hmm.
both. So highly rewarding means that you crave the food. If I ask you what's your favorite food at whatever restaurant, if you think about it long enough, you'll actually start to feel hungry.
Yeah.
Or a smell. If you drive by a restaurant, you just smell a food.
Mm-hmm.
You'll all of a sudden become hungry, and these foods are designed to make you hungry, basically. And then if a food is highly palatable, then when you're actually eating that food, those hormones don't get decreased like ghrelin, and then other hormones that typically increase, like peptide YY, that actually decreases hunger. That never increases. So what ends up happening is you're able to continuously overeat, and eat more calories than what your body typically would want you to. And it's all through the great science of food science. So some very smart individuals making these foods.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, there's just teams and teams of scientists. Just that's their job, right? Just to make
Right.
foods as kind of, I guess, addicting as possible, and tasting the
Right.
greatest. And
And now, if you go through a grocery store and you see, marketing now is advertised to make sure that it's low fat or low sugar,
mm-hmm,
or whatever it may be, to make it
mm-hmm,
seem more appealing.
yeah,
But what's happening is, yes, it is lower calories, but it's not affecting your hunger like it should be.
right.
So you end up eating just as many calories with this low fat food as you would if you were to just eat the high fat food to begin with.
Yeah, sometimes even more, right? Because you don't have the
Right.
fat. Because I mean, the fat in a lot of foods is what does give you that kind of satiating type feeling, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I know, and that's a hard thing for. I mean, I tell my clients that all the time. To if you're going to eat something and you're trying to find something, I always tell them, like, don't even bother going with the low fat. Just if you're going to have it, just have the full version of it, and just try to eat less of it, or whatever. But it's a hard thing for some people to kind of wrap their heads around, that might be a better option.
Right. I mean, the thing that most people just think about is calories, and
Yeah,
and calories are important, but they're definitely not everything,
yeah.
and that's one of the things that most people just totally ignore.
Yeah, exactly. Like I see, there's all the calorie people all over Facebook and everywhere. I mean, a calorie isn't just a calorie. Like there's so much
Right.
more that goes into it, and so much more into how it affects your body. Like you were saying, with the appetite suppression and the hormone regulation and all of that stuff. Like a calorie is so much more than just a calorie, when you eat it.
Right. And you often see foods marketed towards boosting metabolism, and
Hmm.
and while that's important, and we all want to make sure our metabolism is as optimal as possible, the I want to help people, and my goal with helping people lose weight is not just to help them lose weight, but to keep weight off.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to reduce your food cravings, and you have to keep your appetite under control. And learning the correct foods to eat, is really the key to doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about kind of the marketing and advertising and stuff of foods and the low fat and low sugar and everything. So how do you
Right.
feel about I mean, now gluten free is everywhere. Gluten free is becoming such a
Right.
popular thing. And you start to see it in everything. There's gluten free crackers, gluten free cookies,
Right.
gluten free pasta, gluten free
Yeah.
everything. So how do you feel about all of those foods, and what should people be looking for when they're shopping for that?
Um, for most people, I just tell them to stay away from most of the gluten-free alternatives.
Yeah.
And if you want to use things like maybe almond flour instead of wheat flour,
Hmm.
that's an okay alternative.
Hmm.
But some of the just because doesn't have gluten in it doesn't mean that it's any less addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And bread that's developed, with other, I'm allergic to gluten myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like full blown. My brother and I both are allergic, so it's something we have to stay away from regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But is it an alternative to maybe fix a craving every now and then? Sure. But it definitely shouldn't be something that you're consuming on a daily basis, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would completely agree too. And that's, I mean, I've said it to people and clients before. I mean, even if you're a gluten-free cookie, it's still a cookie, right? Like there's
Right,
still, it's still,
right,
it's still
right,
not the greatest option for you. Regardless of whether it has gluten in it or not, there's still a bunch of other crap in it.
right. I totally agree. And then, as far as appetite suppression and looking at, how these foods are processed, they're made to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're there to increase, the amount of calories that you have, not affect your appetite, so you eat more of them. And then the end result for a lot of people is they just don't lose the weight, even though they did cut out gluten, which can be highly rewarding and highly palatable, like I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, so let's talk a little bit about actual diets and actual meal planning and some
Right.
suggestions and stuff like that, and some appetite suppression things. So if people think their eating is just way out of control and they really want to work on eating maybe a little bit less or help themselves eat a little bit less, how can they go about doing that and try to suppress their appetite in healthy ways?
Well, the first thing that I have most people do is actually just focus on eating, actually 3 meals per day. I know that's like old school nutrition, and
Yeah, you're
you
so
had to eat
outdated.
them. Yeah, exactly. I need to update my stuff to more
Yeah.
modern techniques. Um, but the key is, to eat those 3 meals and to eat till you're completely full. Which for most people, if you eat to where you feel about 80% full, in about typically about 10 minutes, you'll realize that you're actually completely satisfied at that point.
Hmm.
But no snacking in between those 3 meals. So it places a really great importance on eating the right foods at those meals.
Hmm.
Because if you decide you're going to eat that processed food, or the junk foods that I like to tell most people that they really are,
Hmm.
you're really going to pay for it, because a couple hours later, you're going to be hungry again, and you're still going to have a few more hours before lunch or dinner. And what you'll find is actually most people don't eat because they're truly hungry.
Hmm.
They've conditioned themselves to wanting to eat consistently throughout the day, whether it's because they think their metabolism needs to be boosted, or whatever it may be. But oftentimes it's not actually out of hunger. It's just due to either cravings,
Hmm.
um, well, either due to cravings that they have because of these certain foods, um, or they're just used to eating that many times. They assume that their metabolism is boosted, and that's why they need to eat more frequently, and it's just not true. So focus on eating 3 meals per day. That's an option that I think a lot of people will benefit from. Those meals need to be higher in protein. And so chicken and fish, eggs, things like that. They're perfect because they have a good source of protein. Some of the sources are a little bit higher in fat, which is perfectly fine, because
Hmm.
protein and fat seems to be the most satiating combination out of any of the foods,
Hmm.
um, especially if you are overweight,
Hmm.
because a little secret that I don't think many people know: when you eat carbohydrates, insulin gets released to help store the carbohydrates.
Hmm.
Well, when insulin works properly, it's actually an appetite suppressing hormone.
Hmm.
Um, the bad thing about it, and why most people don't really realize that, is because when you're insulin resistant, even if not fully insulin resistant, um, if insulin can't do its job properly, then you don't get the appetite suppression that you typically would.
Hmm.
And so that's why you hear people say eating a higher fiber food, whether it's brown rice versus white rice, those type of things. Um, if you're insulin sensitive, that's great, and you can even eat foods like white rice and not have any issues with appetite suppression.
Hmm.
But if you're insulin resistant and you eat those carbohydrates, you expect to be hungry pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something too, like that's a good thing that you brought up. I'm glad you brought that up because that's very important. And I mean a lot of the population now is very overweight, and a lot of the population is, insulin resistant and can't handle those carbohydrates the same way as someone with a lower body fat percentage and better insulin sensitivity could handle that.
Right, and most people, you don't have to be diabetic. That's a
Hmm.
misconception. Um, in order to be insulin resistant, and it's a test that you can have your physician, you know, uh, an oral glucose tolerance test, I believe, is what it's called,
Hmm.
and that'll just show how well you tolerate carbohydrates. And they don't do it very often unless they think that you are full blown, diabetic.
Hmm.
But it's a simple test, and if you're overweight, there actually is a pretty high chance that you're already somewhat slightly insulin resistant.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's talk about actual foods then. So take me through a typical day. Take me through a perfect day for your clients, or for you, or for your clients, or someone that
Okay.
you'd be coaching.
Right. So for breakfast, typically it is. So for myself or for a lot of my clients, I'm a big egg person. So
Hmm.
I would have maybe 4 whole eggs, cooked whatever way you prefer.
Hmm.
Um, I usually fix an omelet with certain amount of vegetables added into it to improve flavor and the benefits of the vegetables themselves,
Hmm.
some additional fiber. Um, that plus typically, I'm not sure how many ounces of blueberries. I'm a big
Hmm.
blueberry person.
Cool.
Or I'll make my own shake with, like a whey casein protein blend.
Okay.
Mix some fruit in with it, and then that'll be my breakfast. Lunch is typically a salad with some type of vinaigrette, some type of protein source, so chicken, um, and then I'll have like white rice.
Mm.
Not your typical diet food, but
Yeah.
combined, it's very appetizing, but not overly rewarding or palatable, like mentioned before.
Hmm.
And then lunch or for dinner, we're looking at a steak, and I'm not talking like the protein sizes of these. I mean, you're looking at maybe half a pound, so
Hmm.
quite a bit of protein.
Yeah.
And a steak, white potato, and then some type of vegetable, whether it's a salad or broccoli, something like that
Hmm.
added to it. Um, and that's really it. And the thing is, you don't start that way.
Yeah.
At first, most people will see that and they're gonna say, that's the most boring diet ever.
That's what
I
people say
mean,
about my
it's
diet too.
yeah, it's just too simple.
Yeah.
How do you eat that? And um, if you do it the right way and you take steps into your diet, you can eventually work your way into where that's what you want to eat.
Hmm.
I don't have to add, I can eat a potato without sour cream and bacon bits and,
Oh
and
my
all the stuff that
God.
people add to it. Yeah. And that's almost sacrilegious to
Yeah,
to
no
a lot of
kidding.
people.
Wow.
Um, but over time, you get used to those things and uh, you almost decondition yourself to not have to have those foods. It's like if I have a few European friends that came over for graduate school, and the first thing they said was our food was too sweet.
Really?
They were just not accustomed to the sweetness of a lot of our foods.
Hmm.
And a year later, they love it. It's no longer too sweet for them. It's because they've conditioned themselves to like it. Whereas before, it was terrible. They hated it. They didn't understand why we liked it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So
Wow. That's awesome. All right. Well, cool, man. That's awesome. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit,
okay,
and we'll kind of transition that. So we talked about some meal planning, some food choices, some things like that. That's really good. So you have a product coming out. You got a program coming out. So maybe just tell
right.
people a little bit about that, and when that's going to be available, and what's all going to be included and all of that.
Okay, so the product is called the Appetite Suppression Blueprint, And it is basically a step for step or step by step program that is basically going to completely change your diet. Um, it's going to allow you to eat the foods that you still enjoy, but I'm also going to show you the foods that you can and can't eat to fully suppress your appetite. When I developed the program, anyone can write a diet to help someone lose weight. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence, unfortunately, for that to happen. But the key is to write a diet that people can lose weight and then keep it off. And that's the key to long-term success. And so with the plan, we're designing recipes. You don't have to even think about what you have to prepare. There's going to be a grocery list. There are some behavioral changes that have nothing to do with food. That if you're actually, how to word this, if you're making these mistakes on a day-to-day basis, your weight loss will unfortunately really stall, and it has absolutely nothing to do with food. So everything from where you eat your food to what you're doing while you're eating your food, they can greatly influence how much you eat. And I want to teach people how to go about making sure they don't make those mistakes. As far as the release date, we're about a week away right now. So today, I believe, is the 15th. So we're looking at about the 22nd from releasing it. It's going to be hopefully a super cheap plan that everyone can afford, provide great value, and answer any questions that you have. I've got a little special note that I want to let all your listeners know. I don't typically do this because I do a lot of one-on-one consultations myself, and I charge a decent amount of money for those here. Anyone that decides to buy my program, send me an email at info@mcdavidfitness.com. That's McDavidfitness.com, and tell me that Cameron sent you, and we're going to give you a free 30-minute one-on-one consultation with myself. No pitching, no trying to sell you something else. It's strictly content. And we'll actually do it after you get to review the product, so that way I can answer any questions that you have. Okay?
Very cool. That's very cool, man. Thanks a lot for doing that. I really appreciate that, and I know a lot of people will get a lot of benefit from that, so that's super cool. I'll make sure there's a special link here below the video also, and I'll put it somewhere around here. And and I'll make sure people that get it through here have your email address and can set that up with you, because that's really cool. I really appreciate you doing that.
No problem. Glad to help.
So it'll be about a week away. What I'll do is I'll probably time this video so that I release it somewhere around the time when you're set to release that product. So it'll kind of time out a little bit better. So people that are watching this video, it's probably already released, and you can probably right now go get it. So, awesome. So I would highly recommend that. Like I said, I'll put a link right below the video here, so make sure you go buy it through that video and take up Shane on his offer for that 30-minute coaching call and make him earn his money.
Exactly.
All right, cool, man. Any closing thoughts? Anything that you think folks should really do immediately? Any action steps that they should take out of this? What's the one thing that people should focus on right now to get a lot out of this video, out of this interview?
Oh wow, tough question. So the one thing that I think people should do, I think the main thing as far as your diet is concerned, I would highly suggest you focus on increasing protein content in your diet. It's a simple step that anyone can do, and make sure you do that every meal. I think that's the quickest way for most people to see results initially. And actually eat until you're full. That sounds like terrible advice. It's like, that's so simplistic. But when people are dieting, psychologically they think they have to be hungry, and the truth is they don't. We have studies where people are eating 200 to 400 calories per day and completely hunger free, losing weight. I'm not saying eat 200 to 400 calories per day, but I'm just saying that it is possible in order for that to happen. So increase the protein in your diet. And if you're vegetarian, Oh man.
I know that's what I say to vegetarians too. Oh man.
Yeah. Definitely look at some higher protein source. So quinoa might be a good option for vegetarians. There are vegetable sourced protein powders that can be an option, especially for breakfast.
Mhm.
Um, and Yeah, so hopefully that'll help.
Very cool, man. Very good. All right. Well, that does it for today. Definitely, like I said, check out Shane's appetite suppressant blueprint that's coming out here, probably somewhere around when you're watching this video. There will be a link right here or below the video in this post or at reengineeryou.com. You can find it out there also. Check out his blog too. What's your blog, Shane?
McDavidFitness.com.
McDavidFitness.com. And I'll put a link somewhere around here for that also that you can go check that out because he's got a lot of really great content on there. Some really great articles. I was reading through some of those today and some really cool stuff on there. So definitely check that out. And as always, if you like this video, please make sure you share the love and try to hit one of those like buttons below the video. Like, tweet, share, +1, stumble, pin, whatever you guys are doing out there. Just do something. Get this video out there because it needs to be out in the world. Share this information with your friends and family, people who you think might benefit from it. And if you'd like another free report from me, please go to reengineeryou.com and you can grab my free report on 3 secrets for massive weight loss. That does it for this episode. Thanks a lot for being here, Shane. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.